Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris here on France 24. I'm joined now by William Edwards from our business desk. Hello, William.
Hi, Lorna.
Right, so we've had some good news on the US jobs figures over the last 24 hours, but the big question is that going to rub off on the European markets? And they've just opened a few moments ago, so bring us up to date.
Broad answer is yes. Let's take a look at the figures, how they have opened up. There has been a bit of optimism, it seems, rubbing off on the European markets after not the same story in Asia. We'll take a look at those figures in a minute. Here is how things are opening in Europe, and you can see just about, well, pretty much flat in London, but just about in the positive across all the major indices. Of course, as I say, things haven't been quite so cheery in Asia, but there has been a bit of green ink around there as well. But there have been continued worries about the euro. You see Shanghai managed to get to a positive close there. But Japan in particular have been worried about the state of the euro because the currency has fallen to an 11-year low against the yen. And of course, this is bad news for Japanese exporters. Japan's finance minister has said that he will be keeping a close eye on the Eurozone situation. Of course, a weaker euro will make it more difficult for European consumers to splash out on Japanese products such as cars and electronics. So could be bad news for Japanese exporters there.
Indeed.
You can see here that's just how things are between the euro and the yen. The euro at an 11-year low, like I say.
Indeed, it's not a happy graph for the euro there, but there are still big worries about the currency, despite that good news from the European markets today. Yeah,
despite that positive sentiment we're just seeing. It's partly, there has been that good news. I suppose it was, that might be partly what's buoying up the European markets, that France had a relatively successful sale of government bonds on Thursday. They didn't quite hit the target of what they were going to sell, but they're pretty much there, and more importantly, the subscription rates were pretty high. It was a well-subscribed auction, so that's positive. But on the bad news front, Spain has announced that its banks will need an additional 50 billion euros in capital to cover possible bad debts. And in the wake of this, prices on Italian debt have gone up to over 7% again. Of course, that 7% figure, the magic number, if it's more than that, their interest rates that they have to pay, then there are worries that the Italian economy might not be able to keep paying that rate. So this morning, Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, she's been talking up the euro, saying there's no reason to think it's going to disappear in 2012, but there are still question marks over the future of the currency. Let's take a look at what 2012 could hold for the Eurozone.
It's the zone's €1 trillion problem. The combined debt Eurozone members will have to refinance this year. The biggest worry is Italy and whether its borrowing costs will spiral out of control. With 16 EU summits in 2 years, European leaders are trying to regain market confidence, but their efforts may not have the intended effects.
The various European summits did not fix the problems. Actually, they fixed year-old problems, but not the current ones. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's a gap between the rhythm of the crisis and the rhythm of politics.
All eyes will also be on Spain as it struggles to regain growth and curb unemployment rates. A tough task as the Eurozone is most likely heading for a recession. 2012 has repeatedly been branded a make-or-break year for the single currency, with some countries possibly leaving the Eurozone.
The bailout agreement needs to be signed. Otherwise, we will be out of the markets, out of the euro.
Eurozone governments are working on a new treaty with 2 goals in mind: increasing financial regulations and enshrining balanced budget rules in national constitutions. These measures are key for the euro to survive.
This crisis cannot be entirely blamed on the euro. It's just a currency. The euro can only have a future if we agree to implement these short-term measures.
European leaders hope to draft a new treaty by March. An EU summit is already scheduled at the end of the month, likely topping the agenda, saving the euro, a currency that just celebrated its 10-year anniversary.
Well, William, perhaps a choppy future for the euro, but there has been some good news for Europeans on the manufacturing front, at least.
Yes, that's right. Boeing, the US rival of Airbus, Boeing has released its final figures for 2011, and the plane maker has come in well behind its European rival. Let's take a look at how those figures have played out over the last quarter century, really. Over the last 9 years, in fact, Airbus has led the charge on this one. They both share the industry between them, basically. But in terms of gross orders, Boeing only got 38% of the large carrier market for 2011, so a bit of a worry there for the US firm. Reasons include, of course, the delay of its 787 Dreamliner. This is a new plane built out of composite materials, so much lighter and more fuel efficient. There are hopes that sales of that and construction of that will really pick up over 2012. And another model, the 737 MAX, that's likely to be a big seller in 2012. So Boeing hoping to pick up the slack there where it's left off a bit in 2011.
Okay, so some good news for Europe this Friday, but we're going to move away from Europe now to a corporate scandal that's gone right to the heart of the Japanese business establishment. Really fascinating story, this.
This is the soap opera, really, that's been going on for the last 3 months or so at Olympus, the camera maker. Former CEO now, Michael Woodford, he blew the whistle on an accounting scandal which saw $1.7 billion go missing in the accounting, in the balance sheets. Now he was trying to get back to be CEO of the company, having blown the whistle, but he's thrown in the towel, saying that institutional investors weren't behind him in his efforts to clean up the firm, and now he's going to sue the company. Let's take a look at the latest.
Former Olympus CEO Michael Woodford set to take his fight with the Japanese company to the next level.
I will most definitely be suing Olympus and making sure that they are held to account for the way they treated me. They dismissed me for gross misconduct.
Woodford had raised a red flag in October when he confronted the management over heavy spending in acquisition deals. It turned out to be a cover-up to hide more than 117 billion yen, $1.5 billion in investment losses dating back to the 90s. Woodford blamed the Japanese corporate culture of maintaining the status quo.
Despite one of the biggest scandals in history, the Japanese institutional shareholders have not spoken one single word of criticism. I think if you look at the fact that the Olympus scandal has gone on for 20 years, that proves that there's something very wrong with governance.
The firm's now under investigation by Japanese police and regulators, as well as British and US authorities. It only narrowly avoided being delisted from the Tokyo Stock Exchange in December, after it refiled corrected earnings for the last 5 years.
Luke Schrago there. Well, we're going to move on now to quite a surprising story about the former CEO of Apple, Steve Jobs, because there's quite a big cult surrounding him. And even after his death, this seems to be carrying on.
Of course, he passed away last October. He, the man who completely reversed Apple's fortunes, made it into the biggest tech company in the world. Here he is a few months back at one of his famous product launches. Well, now a Hong Kong company called In Icons has announced an action figure. Can you imagine any other action figure with any other CEO, with an action figure? I mean, I'm not sure Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer of Microsoft would.
Maybe that chap from Olympus might be getting one if he's not careful.
He does not. Let's just take a look at some of the pictures, because it is quite unsettlingly lifelike. This is from the company's website, which is making these 12-inch action figures. Now, needless to say, I suppose, Apple's not too pleased about this use of their former boss's image. And according to the Britain's Daily Telegraph newspaper, they're now taking legal action to get this stopped. It was set to be released in February, but the courts may have something else to say about that.
I'd have thought they might quite want to encourage that publicity, and it does look quite a flattering figure, but there we go, we'll have to see what happens. Will you be buying one, William?
Not for $99, which is what they're going for.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's quite a sum. Well, thank you very much indeed for that look at all today's business stories, and that's just all from us for now. Many thanks for being with us, and do stay tuned. There's more news headlines coming up with Chris Moore right after the weather.